When the United States designated Nigeria as a country of particular concern, it wasn't just about Christian persecution, it was a diplomatic way of saying you have lost control of your own state. The CPC label means the United States government now formally recognizes Nigeria as a country that tolerates ongoing violations of religious freedom. But what that really means in plain English is this: our security system is broken beyond denial. It is also a moral embarrassment. While widows of fallen soldiers queue endlessly for unpaid benefits, their commanders drive out of their office in bulletproof SUVs, bought with taxpayers' money. That is the portrait of Nigeria's power. Privilege built on paralysis. And today, the result is visible for the whole world to see. Nigeria's sovereignty is being questioned, not by rebel, but by reality. There is something deeply wrong with how power behaves in this country. A kind of moral illness that turns service into spoils, loyalty into privilege, and uniform into privilege. Look closely at our security chiefs, those who swore to defend the nation. They move and retire into convoys and comfort, while the nation they commanded lies naked and bruised. They live in mansions built on insecurity, while the very idea of national defense has become a national joke. We live in a country where failure gets rewarded and loyalty gets paid in gold. Where a nation that cannot provide security and dignity for its citizens somehow finds luxury for security commanders. That is the paradox that defines Nigeria's security culture. A nation at war with insecurity, led by a system that profits from the same fight. I have always said that what's breaking Nigeria is not just corruption, it's the design of impunity. Every year, billions of naira disappear under the name of security. Defense budgets swell, yet the insecurity in this country deepens. Soldiers are sent to the front line without adequate gear, while generals retire in convoy. This annoys me. When a nation cannot protect its own people, the question is not why are we unsafe? The question is who benefits from our insecurity? Because somehow, someone always does benefit. Someone always eats from the chaos by pocketing the funds meant for safety. And until we confront that truth, Nigeria will continue to mistake uniforms for integrity and mistake hierarchy for honor. Let's call it what it is. Nigeria's security system has collapsed a long time ago, not because we lack soldiers, but because we lack sincerity. When terrorists can march through villages unhindered, when kidnappers can operate on highways in daylight, when bandits can tax community under the military watch, that is not just a religious problem, that is a governance problem. It is the total collapse of state protection. The government's first duty, the monopoly of legitimate force, no longer exists. Power has been privatized. Security has been commercialized. Violence has been franchised, while the government negotiates in silence. The result is predictable. Fear has become policy and safety has become privilege. But even that is not even the worst. The worst part is that those responsible for this failure are the ones rewarded the most. In Nigeria, insecurity has become an economy, a profitable disorder. Every crisis becomes a budget. Every killing becomes an allocation. Every new threat becomes a new contract. The deeper the chaos, the fatter the pockets of those who claim to fight it. That is why we no longer solve problems. We monetize them. The same opacity sits in the defense quarters. In the end, we do not know what is bought for security. We do not know how much is priced. We do not know who paid. Some of our soldiers even buy their own boots. Police beg for fuel. Citizens bury their own dead. It's not incompetence anymore. It's organized irresponsibility. It is sustained by a class of security elites who understand things that citizens don't. Nigerian security chiefs do not fear failure anymore. They fear displeasing power. Because in this nation, in this country, it's not about performance. It's about proximity. You rise by allegiance, not by achievement. You retire with comfort, not with conscience. The chain of command now begins and ends in the corridors of politics. Reports are edited to protect political images. Failures are rebranded as operational challenges. And every massacre is met with the same insult of statement. We are on top of the situation. No, they are not. They are never on top of the situation. They are on top of the system, milking it, milking the insecurity. And this is what happens when loyalty becomes the currency of leadership. When generals owe their survival to precedents instead of the constitution, accountability disappears. And so the system rewards silence, not success. It protects careers, not citizens. The result is a military that looks strong on parade, but weak in principle. A police that salutes the powerful and ignores the powerless. A state that punishes whistleblowers, but promotes wasters. This right here is why the world has begun to step in. Because when a nation can no longer discipline itself, it becomes a global concern. When the United States placed Nigeria on its country of particular concern list, it was not a colonial echo or moral arrogance. It was a statement of civic reality. It was the free world saying you are losing your moral compass, and with it, your legitimacy. The CPC designation was not just about religion, to be honest. It was about responsibility. It was a warning. They see what our leaders refuse to see. A powerful country rendered powerless by its own corruption. A military that has forgotten its oath. A government that can no longer guarantee safety or justice. The CPC designation, therefore, is not an intrusion, to be honest. It's an indictment. It is the global mirror we've refused to look into. It is the international community saying, if your generals serve politicians instead of the people, then your sovereignty is already compromised. And this is the painful truth. The threat to our sovereignty is not from Washington. It is within Abuja. Because sovereignty without accountability is only a flag, a hollow emblem flying over a broken house. Let's talk about uniformed privilege, a phenomenon where public office is not a service, but a staircase to personal comfort. It begins with language, service, honor, sacrifice, but it ends with luxury, immunity, and power. In Nigeria, the uniform is supposed to symbolize duty, but over time, it has become a shield, not against bullet, but against accountability. It has become a brand of entitlement. Those who wear it expect special treatment, not scrutiny. You see it in retirement packages that defy logic. You see it in the way former service chiefs transition seamlessly into political appointments, from barracks to boardrooms, from command post to diplomatic lounge. It's a revolving door of privilege, not service. And every step on that staircase is financed by citizens who sleep in fear. How does a country that cannot fund hospitals afford convoys for retired generals? How does a government that pleads for debt forgiveness provide medical allowance abroad for its elites? It doesn't make sense. It does so because the system is built to protect the powerful and not the public. This is painful on so many levels. For every luxury convoy leaving the military headquarters, there is a widow of a fallen soldier waiting for unpaid benefits. For every official residence furnished for retiring officer, there are displaced families in Borno, Benue, Plateau, Kaduna, whose home will never be rebuilt ever again. For every naira spent on elite security, there is a child who would never see a classroom again. This is not theory. This is arithmetic. Every naira spent on elite comfort is a naira stolen from public safety. Every privilege extended upwards deepens poverty downwards. We have built a nation where sacrifice is celebrated in speeches but punished in real life, where the people who risk everything for the flag return to nothing, while those who command from air-conditioned rooms retire in luxury estates. This is not patriotism. This is profiteering, and it must be named for what it is. It is a betrayal of service. It doesn't matter how they try to paint it. When the US declared Nigeria a country of particular concern for religious freedom violations, it was not an insult. Contrary to what the government would want you to believe, it was a diagnosis. It was Washington's way of saying you have lost control of your security system and your conscience, because what the world sees is a government that cannot protect its own people because it lacks the will to do so. For years, Nigeria has refused to prosecute known perpetrators of terror-related killings in this country. We have allowed killers to blend into politics. And so, the international community has finally called it for what it is: systemic, ongoing failure. It was not about religion alone. It was about the rot of governance. The world now sees Nigeria for what it is, for what Nigerians live daily, where violence is tolerated, justice is selective, and privilege is perpetual. You see, when a government loses its moral authority, it doesn't need enemies. It destroys itself from within. That is what is happening in Nigeria. The security apparatus in this country that should defend the republic is defending the elite class. The political elite that should be accountable to the people are accountable only to themselves. This is not a system. It's a syndicate, a collaboration between power and silence. And that is why, even in the face of national tragedy, the powerful feels no shame at all, because the system no longer measures leadership by service. It measures leadership by survival. We now live in a state that worship titles but ignore truth, that applauds uniform but abandons value, that buries justice and then decorates the undertakers. Let it be said clearly and without confusion: Nigeria is not at war with the United States. What US have done is not an act of hostility. It is a mirror, a message, a measure. The US did not fire a bullet. It held up a light. It did not invade our sovereignty. It exposed how we have invaded our own integrity, because nations that fail to police itself invite the concern of those who still believe in order. This is not foreign interference. It is foreign reflection. The war is not between Abuja and Washington. The war is between our conscience and our corruption in this country. And until we admit that the enemy is within, not abroad, we will keep making the same mistake, the same accountability mistake that we have made over the years. You see, when I reflect on African paradox, the real crisis in Africa today is not open tyranny. It is tyranny disguised as democracy. Across the continent, power no longer storms the gate. Look around the continent and you will see the same disease wearing different colors. Power in Africa no longer seizes authority, it inherits it. It no longer breaks constitutions, it blends them gently with judicial blessings. From Kampala to Abuja, the story is the same. Presidents who refuse to retire, generals who outlive accountability, institutions that exist only to decorate dysfunction. We call it democracy, but it's democracy by design, designed to protect rulers, not to empower citizens. The tragedy is not that Africa lacks authority, it's that it lacks constitutional culture. We have laws, but we don't believe they apply to us. We know justice, but we prefer discretion. And so tyranny no longer arrives with tanks. It arrives with ballots, lawyers, and applause. Nigeria is not immune. We may not have lifetime presidents, but we have lifetime privileges. A political aristocracy that transitions seamlessly from office to office, from government to government, always eating, never accountable. That's how the spirit of democracy dies. Not with coups, but with continuity of silence and corruption. It is time to confront an uncomfortable truth. The real threat to Nigeria's stability is not just the terrorism in the forest, it is the elected and appointed officials in offices. It is the system that normalizes corruption. The world has seen it, even if we pretend not to. When soldiers die for a country that does not care for them, when generals retire into privilege while the poor bury their children, when religion becomes the mask for state collapse, the free world takes notice. I have always said that power never reforms itself out of guilt, it reforms only out of pressure. And that pressure must come from us, the citizens, the media, the civic community, the youth who still believe that this country can be reborn. If the world can hold up a mirror to us, then we must have the courage to look into it. The reckoning is not about foreign intervention, it is about national introspection. It is about understanding that when Nigeria's security chiefs fail to secure lives and government fail to secure trust, the very soul of the republic becomes an orphan. The CPC designation should not anger us. It should awaken us. It is a reminder that the world is watching. But most importantly, that history is recording. Nigeria doesn't just need reform. It needs remorse, the moral kind of remorse, the kind that makes privilege uncomfortable when the people are still hungry. Because when leadership loses the capacity to feel shame, it loses the capacity to change. Democracy is not defended by soldiers, it is defended by citizens who refuse to be silent. If there is one thing history keeps teaching us, is that nations do not collapse when leaders fail. They collapse when citizens stop caring. It is time to care again, collectively, publicly, to speak, not because it is safe, but because silence has become collaboration. Stay engaged, stay organized, stay focused. This is Civic Room with Menkiti, and I'll see you in the next episode.